Hey everyone, it's Skater here. Welcome back to my channel. Today I want to show you and talk to you and draw out for you and explain to you in concrete detail how the narcissist projects and creates a false self for you. Now, if you clicked on this video today, if you are watching this and if you are still facing narcissistic abuse, if you are wondering, should I stay, should I go? If you are constantly searching up narcissistic behavior and learning about the disorder, there are spectrums, as you know. So depending on your abuser, your abuse can be from high to low. But when I say low, it's still abuse. It's emotional abuse. It is neglect. It is keeping you stuck on a cycle of hindering your growth. They are stopping you from evolving. They are actually changing the neurons in your brain, and they are sending you a download of their reality, and you are living that reality, which is a giant fog of illusions. So let's begin. When you meet a narcissist, this could be the narcissist. And this could be you. Now, this could have happened from childhood. This could happen in your adulthood. This could happen in a workplace. This can happen in a building with neighbors. This can happen in the street with random strangers. This can happen when you go grocery shopping. This can happen when you are putting gas in the car. This is what's going to naturally happen if you are not aware of what's happening to you in the moment. You see, everything is energy. Your human eye is not capable of understanding or seeing it. So your brain, is always in a state of shock, confusion, low self-esteem, right? You naturally, by default, feel all of that when you experience any toxic individual or a NPD or the dark triad. So this is for all of them. Now, what's happening here? When you meet these individuals, first of all, the reason that I drew them, as you can see, in black highlight is because their aura, you must pay attention to understand and move on. This is for you to understand instead of staying and allowing this to continue. Their aura, who they are on the inside, does not exist. A narcissist's aura, by default, is a black hole. Now, a black hole is someone who lives in perpetual state of negative thinking. Basically, garbage. So their brain is dysfunctional. Their brain cannot soak or create or digest or accept positive energy because it is already a black hole, which means it will suck. It will suck the energy right out of a person right away because you are in their orbit. And the orbit, like I said, everything is energy. So the orbit is vibrating. Not only is it vibrating death, but you are falling into the black hole. that they are constantly in a state of. It's unseen. Okay? Everything is energy. Okay? So you meet a narcissist and instantly, any toxic individual, you will feel shock, confusion, low self-esteem. Why? Because in that very moment, they are actually taking your energy. And so you start to feel drained. And the drain becomes shocking, confusing, and creates low self-esteem because you lost your energy, which means you lost your esteem. You lost a physical, psychic part of you, and it was swallowed into the narcissist's black hole. Now, this is just the beginning. There is so much more than this. Now, naturally, when I say that the narcissist has a dark aura, let's go back to this because this is extremely important. Anybody who does not exist on the inside, which means that they lost their soul, or their soul is trapped in something evil, something dark, okay? It happens to everyone that if they lack an internal self, they basically, at this stage, if they lack an internal self. Now, the internal self is your intuition. It's when something bad happens to you in life, you get yourself up and you take care of yourself. You say, you know what, it's going to be fine. You tell yourself you're going to heal. You start taking more caution. You start to maybe tell yourself that it was a lesson. You know, there's an internal dialogue that saves you from pain or teaches you a lesson. Yeah, they don't have that. So what happens naturally to somebody who has no self, somebody who's a black toxic hole? There is no self. And when I say, for anybody who's listening, whether you're watching this because it's your parent or relationship partner or a friend or anybody mentioned prior, this individual, that's not, we're going to get so much to this topic, but they're not just sucking your energy, but this individual, they have no self. They have no self. That's why they need substance from people to exist. And when I say exist, it means anything that reaches them in proximity, anything that's in their reality, in their phone, in their life, they feed off of to exist, the false self. See, a narcissist created a false self for you, and we're going to get to that. But naturally, by default, a narcissist is a false self, which means there is no self. Void. There is no such thing. What the narcissist is doing is always mirroring you. There is a invisible mirror here. And as much as you think that they're not mirroring you, you're still not seeing, because you're living in probably cognitive dissonance. Your physical body is unable to see because you're so drowned and impregnated with their negative aura and all the trauma and all the dodging the bullets that you have to do all the time just to stay alive. Now, notice when the narcissist speaks to somebody else, their personality completely changes. And it's because, again, they have no self. So they always mirror the people that they talk to, even if you physically cannot understand or see it. But you will eventually, once you realize how they created a false self for you. Right? So they have no true self. They are empty. You are not only getting drained because they're sucking your energy, but you are getting drained because you're talking to someone who doesn't even exist. Not only that, but they actually projected a false self onto you. So you are actually mirroring to a narcissist a false self. Let me show you what that false self is and how it's created. See, before you met the narcissist, you were probably happy. So you have this good aura. Maybe you weren't so happy. Maybe you were going through something during the day. But your brain neurons at the time only worked for you. At the time, your mental state, everything that you are, everything that you learned in life, everything that you thought about yourself, your likes, your dislikes, your boundaries, the way that you treat yourself, the way that you behave, was only for you. There was no other person living in your head. Now, anytime you meet a false self, even if you're not in a relationship or a friendship with these individuals, what happens when you even look at them from across the street, when you see them maybe even from 2 miles away? What happens is, again, everything is energy. What happens is that you naturally, psychically, are getting downloads, brain neuronic downloads, the information of the information, right? In their head. You may not physically see that. Again, everything is energy. And I'm sure that on some level you're aware of that. Because when you are experiencing certain things, you feel it physically. That's the unseen, energetic reality that we're all living in. So now, when you engage with a narcissist and you're starting to feel all these symptoms, it's because you are actually receiving a download from who they are. Their neurons in their brain are transferred into yours simply because you are in communication. Even if you make physical eye contact, any sort of communication with any external person, even if it's a positive, outgoing, very, very nice person, right? You'll always exchange neurons. That's why you can hear each other's thoughts. That's why you can tell if they're going to call you or text you. Everything is energy. Okay? Now, this is the most interesting and important part. When you make physical eye contact, now this is where you need to pay attention. When you make physical eye contact with the D, right? When you make physical eye contact, what happens to you when this little insane transaction happens? What happens here is because the narcissist is, again, a false self. So nothing inside of them is good or is true. Now, when I say false, it's because it's not true. It's not true. It's not true. It's false. It's not real. It can maybe come out of their mouth, but it's not real. It's a fake, made up projection that they cannot stop from doing. It's natural. That's how they live. So when you make eye contact with a narcissist, what happens to you physically is that they actually project an idea of who you are and how you look like and who you're supposed to be in this life and what they want you to be. They project onto you an actual false self. You see, before you met them, you were not. You were your own being. Whether you had a spiritual awakening or not, this is just when you were normal, when you were living normal life in the 3D. You were, you had a self. You knew exactly who you were. Maybe sometimes you were insecure, but it was just your own stuff. It wasn't something that someone else put in there. So now they psychically, when they stare at you, and a lot of times when you stare at a narcissist and you have these deep gazes, even if there's no communication, even when you do communicate, you almost have a feeling like you're falling. Like you're falling and you're losing your legs, you're losing your brain, you're losing your sight. You're losing your sense of self. So they're sucking your energy. They're wasting your time because you're talking to somebody who doesn't exist. So you're just wasting energy on an illusion, really. So you're wasting this energy, and not only that, now they're staring at you and they are projecting an actual egoic entity, identity onto you. So they create this layer, this outer layer. You see, the way I drew it purposefully to come out of you, like static. Now, why is this? What is this? What does that mean? When they project this false self onto you, you receive that download in your neuron. You see the version of you that they projected onto you instantly. All of a sudden, you see that apparently you're ugly. Apparently you're not smart. Apparently you're really stupid. And apparently you need to work really hard right now to get their validation. You see, a false self is a false self, and they projected who they are, what they are, and they created an identity for you to be like them. But it's not for you both to be false selves. It's for you to completely stoop down to a level that's lower than theirs and become the human slave that they physically see you being. Because to them, you're this nasty false self that they projected on to you. They can't see who you are. And why is that? It's because there is no self in there. How can they see you if they don't have a self of their own? A narcissist is a two-dimensional being. They only see physical form, which means they don't see the insides of you. They're only disgusted. They're disgusted at the fact that you think you can be an individual person. You're supposed to be a slave for them, for the false self. So they project the false self onto you now. If you in any way look for their approval, Start explaining yourself. Start to actually feel low self-esteem and truly be there and continue this communication or argument or fight. What happens is that the layer that they projected on you grows thicker. Now you are starting to become this entity. And it gets thicker and thicker the more you stay. If you're in a relationship, if you're a child, the scapegoat, even the golden child. You see, the golden child completely identifies with the false projection of the narcissist. And that's why they can never, ever find themselves, the golden children. They are an entire false projected identity of the narcissist that they psychically gave to their child since they were born. Now, the individuals, right, that have this false self now, the individuals who are currently suffering in narcissistic relationships or situations in any way, what they haven't realized is that the pain body, and perhaps maybe the pain body is not even a good example or a good layout for this incredible, thick, false self that the narcissist created. What I'm going to call this is an outer body experience. Let me explain. Notice every time you deal with a narcissist or you know that you have to deal with them, what happens to you? You're not the blue. You're not experiencing yourself anymore. You're constantly experiencing that outer pain and fear that comes out, and it cripples you and makes you comply to the false self. You see, that pain that you're experiencing is a projection. It's not who you are. They gave you this layer, but it's truly not who you are. And many of you know that. But once you truly realize, every time this pain comes up, every time the fear comes up, you need to realize that that's the image. Let me explain this way. The narcissist can only speak to you if you keep providing them this outer layer, because that's the only layer that they know. They don't know the inside. They don't know the real you. The more you keep providing them this layer, the longer they will exist in your reality. This layer is false. It's not real. I know it's physically painful to let go of that layer, but you need to remember that the narcissist projected this fake layer onto you. So guess what? If by any chance you have this realization and you completely take off this layer, you will realize that without this layer, without this perceived idea of you, they cannot touch you. They cannot be in your life. They cannot speak to you. They cannot even energetically be part of your brain neurons anymore. And you know why that is? It's because you realize that this layer is not you at all. And the only way that they can exist is if you use that layer, if you actually identify as that layer. If you keep acting like the layer that they projected onto you, they will still be part of your life. But if you remind yourself that this is just a layer that they created for you in order to control you, and without that layer, they just cannot. So how do you get out of that layer? How do you disidentify with the false self that the narcissist projected onto you? You have to remember, number one, that it's a false self. It's not real. It's not real. Everything they ever projected onto you is not you. Everything they ever made you feel is not you. They just projected this idea onto you, and you took it in by being in their presence and experiencing their brain neurons. Now, the biggest issue here is not only this fake layer, but it's the fact that, yes, in this moment, they did change the neurons in your brain. So you are living in fantasy land in 2D, just like them. You are insecure. You are unaware of yourself. You are questioning everything that you're doing. You are hypervigilant, looking for problems. You are worried about the narcissist and their next move. You are laser focused on the narcissist. You can't relax. And it's because of this layer. You argued with them and you fought with them so many times that this layer that they projected onto you is just active 24 hours. It's active. Like that. Now, the neurons in your brain know that it's not you. That's why it's suffering. It's not you. You are experiencing somebody else's reality. Your reality probably is 3D. But you are literally experiencing their timeline. So what does that mean? You are not a person. You are not an essence. You are an object. Just like the narcissist. They are an object. They have no self. So how do you get your mind to disconnect with the narcissist's neurons? Because as you all know, when you deal with a narcissist, you are basically an extension of them, which means that every time you experience them, when you're in their existence, you just by default don't exist, and your head is almost like attached to theirs. You now become one. There is no you. There is the narcissist and all the things that they want you to be. And it's constantly energetically in the air. So if the narcissist is smiling at you and saying, no, that's not how it is, the energy does not lie. But you're not listening to yourself anymore because the narcissist programmed into your psyche to literally forget yourself and only worry about what's happening in their brain. But the narcissist is a black hole. So you keep falling and falling and falling. And until you realize that this outer shell is not you at all and let it go. And when I say let it go, what do I mean? You have to really sit and smile and realize that you're not a false self. All those projections are false self. They're coming from an external false person, an external validation. Something external. It's false. It's not real. And especially with a narcissist, it's not real because there is no self. They're not seeing you at all. They're only seeing themselves. The reflection of their ugliness, and they project it on everyone. Now, a false self is naturally miserable, insecure, unaware, not sure. They want to be entitled over everyone because they truly believe that they're the smartest person in the world. But guess what? A true self knows themselves, and they don't act like that. Only a false self does, because there is no self to validate. So if you fell in the arms of a narcissist by any chance after childhood, maybe they came to your life to teach you this very lesson, to finally stop looking for outside validation, maybe stop rejecting yourself for other people, maybe learn that you're not a false self. But if you grew up with narcissists and you are in a dysfunctional narcissistic household, they're never going to change. They always are going to see you as garbage. It's not your fault. Understand the narcissist is a false self. Every time they yell and scream at you and accuse you of something, it's because they did it. And as long as you stay and argue with them that you didn't do it, and argue with them that you're right and they should be accountable, and try to teach them, the more this layer will keep growing, and the harder and longer it will be for you to recover from their false self that they projected onto you. Now, every time you, maybe after the narc abuse, maybe after years of quote unquote healing, you still identify with these belief systems, and it's because you haven't realized yet that it's still not you, and you haven't released it. You haven't released those layers. They're not you. They're not you. People can call you ugly. People can call you names. People can accuse you of something. But what makes them believe or have so much integrity or commitment, you can say, to what they're actually spewing on you? And why do you believe that? Right? So if, for instance, if the narcissist called you all types of names and you started to create this layer and start believing that about yourself, their validation of you was way more important than the reflection of yourself. And I understand for so many people go through this, right? But you have to remember that the only reason that this layer is there from the very beginning is because you were just in their presence. Any false self, any toxic person, you will feel these sensations because it's not about you. You're just entering their black hole. So you're feeling these things again. It has nothing to do with you. So you have to remember, every time you hear these devaluations and statements, it's not you. It's not you. Now, the reason that you may still walk around with these thoughts in your head is because you still haven't detached from their mind. Your neurons are still playing their neurons. So what do? How do you detach? How do you let go of this layer? First of all, again, you're not a false self. If you hear in your mind anything negative, it's a false self always. Always. Because life is meant to experience and to enjoy. There is nothing right or wrong. Life is an experience. Anybody who talks badly to you and tells you you're wrong, who are they to say that you're wrong? Life is an experience. Everybody's supposed to experience life. But with a narcissist, you don't experience anything. They just bring you down so you don't end up experiencing anything, not even yourself. So who is dumb? Are you dumb? Or is the narcissist just very dumb and incapable of actually experiencing life? The narcissist shouldn't live in your head. It's a false self. Everything they ever said to you was a mirror of what you wanted to see, what you wanted to hear, validation. Or it was a projection of what they kept wanting you to experience as their slave, the outer red shell. So now when you walk outside and you're experiencing this intense shell that comes out, and you will experience it, it's the false self that keeps coming out of you when you are afraid of something, when you're putting yourself down, when you're not being yourself. This is the false outer shell that keeps coming out every time you are experiencing toxic people. Because you believe that in order to survive, you need to reactivate this shell and explain to them why you're not what they think that you are. Understand, this shell, if you took it out right now and threw it in the garbage, if you took this shell completely off, you would never associate with people like that ever again, because you understand that they are a false self by default. Anything that's negative, anything that is hindering, everything to degrade an individual is coming from somebody who simply cannot experience and grow in life. So I sincerely hope that this made so much sense for you, so you can finally take this layer off, and every time you hear negative thoughts, smile and say, no, it's false, it's not real. It's false because it came out of somebody else's mouth. It's false because this person has no right to claim that you are something which you are not. And even if you were, they should not believe that it's okay to speak so poorly of somebody who may be stupid. But still, only negative people who have nothing good to say put other people down, because they are by default false self. There's nothing inside them to offer. So every time, again, that you hear the narcissist's voice in your head, it's not your voice, is it? It's a false voice. I'll see you guys on the next mental health series.